5 years after nearly freezing to death to save a stranger, Jasmine Brooks had built an empire of hope. Then, at 22 years old, everything she'd built was about to crumble. One phone call, one missing girl, one choice that would force her to relive her worst nightmare. This time, would she survive? Stay with me, because what happens next will leave you speechless. Welcome to Voice of Granny. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. 5 years had passed since that freezing December night, and Jasmine Brooks was now 22 years old, standing at the threshold of something she'd never imagined possible. She held her social work degree in one hand and the keys to the Margaret Stone Foundation's newest shelter in the other. The building stood in Englewood, one of Chicago's most underserved neighborhoods, a place Jasmine knew all too well from her years on the streets. The shelter could house 30 young people at a time, offering not just beds and meals, but therapy, job training, education support, and most importantly, dignity. Jasmine had insisted on that last part during every planning meeting. These kids weren't charity cases. They were survivors who deserved respect. Catherine stood beside her, looking at the building with pride and something else, maybe memory, maybe gratitude. "Your grandmother would be so proud," she said, squeezing Jasmine's shoulder. "5 years ago, you were the one who needed help. Now look at you." Jasmine smiled, but her mind was already racing ahead. Tonight was the shelter's official opening, and they were expecting their first residents. Among them was Aaliyah, the girl Jasmine had met 2 years ago, who was now training to be a peer counselor. The circle was completing itself in ways that still amazed Jasmine. "We're ready," Jasmine said, more to herself than to Catherine. "We've got good staff, strong programs, and enough funding for the first 2 years. We can really make a difference here." But even as she said it, she felt the familiar flutter of anxiety in her chest. What if she wasn't enough? What if she failed these kids the way the system had failed her? Catherine seemed to read her mind, as she often did. "You're going to be amazing," she said firmly. "You know what they need because you've lived it. That's not a weakness, Jasmine. It's your superpower." The opening ceremony that evening was small and intimate. No politicians, no press, just the staff, a few community members, and Margaret, who'd insisted on being there despite her declining health. She was 85 now, and her clear moments were becoming rarer. But tonight her eyes sparkled with awareness as she cut the ribbon alongside Jasmine. "To new beginnings," Margaret said, her voice strong. "And to the girl who taught us all what courage really means." As the first residents began arriving, Jasmine greeted each one personally. There was Marcus, 16, who'd been kicked out for being gay. Destiny, 18, pregnant and terrified. Ramon, 17, who'd aged out of foster care with nowhere to go. And so many others, each carrying their own story of survival, their own wounds that needed healing. Jasmine watched them settle in, remembering her own first night at the Stone Mansion, the disbelief, the fear that it would all be taken away. She understood the way they moved carefully through the space, touching things lightly, as if afraid to leave a mark. She knew that particular kind of fear intimately. Later that night, after everyone had been fed and shown to their rooms, Jasmine found Aaliyah in the common room, staring out the window at the Chicago skyline. "Thinking about your first night at the shelter?" Jasmine asked, settling beside her. Aaliyah nodded. "I remember being so scared. I didn't believe anyone could actually help me. I'd been disappointed so many times." She turned to Jasmine with a smile. "But you were different. You saw me. Really saw me." "I saw myself," Jasmine said simply. "That's what we do here. We see people." A crash from upstairs interrupted them. Jasmine jumped up and ran toward the sound, finding Marcus in his room, his mattress flipped over, his face twisted with rage and fear. "I can't do this," he was saying, his voice breaking. "I can't. It's going to fall apart. It always falls apart." Jasmine approached slowly, keeping her voice calm. "Marcus, hey, it's okay. Nothing's falling apart." "You don't understand," he said, sliding down the wall. "Every time I start to feel safe, something happens. Every time I let myself hope, it gets taken away. I can't go through that again." Jasmine sat down on the floor beside him, close but not touching. "I do understand," she said. "When I first came to live with the Stones, I barely slept for weeks. I kept waiting for someone to tell me it was a mistake, that I had to leave. I was so afraid of hoping." Marcus looked at her, really looked at her. "What changed?" "Nothing happened overnight," Jasmine admitted. "But slowly, day by day, I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, some good things could last. And you know what? Some can. Not everything is temporary. Not everyone leaves. She stood and offered him her hand. Come on. Let's put this mattress back and get you settled. And tomorrow, we'll talk about everything that's scaring you. All of it. You don't have to carry it alone anymore. Marcus took her hand, and as they fixed his room together, Jasmine felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. This was what she'd signed up for, these moments of crisis and fear. These kids who needed someone to stay when things got hard. She thought about that December night, about the choice she'd made to stay with Margaret. Every day here would be another version of that same choice to stay when walking away would be easier. As she left Marcus's room, her phone buzzed. It was David, now 20 and studying business at Northwestern. How's the first night going? His text read. Challenging. Perfect. Scary. Right, she typed back. That's the Jasmine Brooks I know, he responded. Call me if you need backup. I can be there in 20 minutes. Jasmine smiled. Family. She had family now, people who showed up, people who stayed. And now she was creating that for others, building the safety net that should exist for every young person but somehow didn't. The rest of that first night passed in a blur of minor crises and small victories. Destiny needed help finding maternity clothes. Ramon couldn't sleep and needed someone to talk to. A girl named Keisha asked about the GED program. By the time dawn broke over Chicago, Jasmine was exhausted, but also strangely energized. This was her calling. This was what all those years of struggle had been preparing her for. 3 months into running the shelter, Jasmine had settled into a rhythm. Wake at 5:30, morning meditation. Arrive at the shelter by 7 o'clock to have breakfast with the residents. Spend the day managing crises and coordinating programs. Evening check-ins, home by 9 o'clock, collapse into bed, repeat. It was exhausting and fulfilling in equal measure. The residents were thriving in their own ways. Marcus had started attending LGBTQ support groups and was talking about going back to school. Destiny was learning about prenatal care and had reconnected with her mother. Ramon was working part-time at a local grocery store and saving money for community college. Small victories, but they added up. Then, on a Tuesday in April, everything changed. Jasmine was in her office reviewing applications for new residents when Aaliyah knocked on the door, her face pale. There's someone here to see you, she said quietly. She says she knows you. Says her name is Crystal. Jasmine's blood went cold. Crystal. She hadn't heard that name in 8 years. Crystal Davis had been her mother's best friend, the woman who'd promised to take care of Jasmine after her grandmother died, then changed her mind 3 days later. The woman who'd said, "You're not my responsibility," and put 14-year-old Jasmine on the street. Tell her I'm busy, Jasmine said, her voice tight. She says it's important. Says she needs to talk to you about your mother. Jasmine closed her eyes, willing away the flood of memories. Her mother, Shanice Brooks, had died of an overdose when Jasmine was 6. Grandma Rose had stepped in, becoming mother and father and everything Jasmine needed. But Crystal had been there too back then. She'd known Jasmine's mother, had stories Jasmine had never heard. Against her better judgment, Jasmine walked to the lobby. Crystal stood there, 8 years older but still recognizable. Thin, worn, with the telltale signs of hard living etched into her face. Jasmine, she said, her voice uncertain. You've done well for yourself. What do you want? Jasmine asked, keeping her voice neutral. Can we talk? Privately. They went to Jasmine's office. Crystal sat down, looking around at the degrees on the wall, the photos of Jasmine with the Stone family. I've been following your story, she said. The news articles about you saving that woman, about this foundation. You're famous. I'm not famous. I'm just doing my job. Crystal nodded, twisting her hands in her lap. I came to apologize. For what I did to you. Putting you out like that. It wasn't right. Jasmine waited, saying nothing. She'd learned in her social work training that silence could be powerful, could make people reveal what they really wanted. I was in a bad place back then, Crystal continued, barely keeping my own head above water. I couldn't take care of myself, let alone a kid. But that doesn't excuse what I did. Leaving you alone like that. She looked up, tears in her eyes. I'm sorry, Jasmine. I'm really sorry. Jasmine felt the old anger stirring, the rage she'd buried under years of therapy and healing. You left me on the street at 14, she said, her voice low and controlled. Do you know what that was like? Do you have any idea what I went through? I know, Crystal whispered. I know, and I'm sorry. I've been clean for 2 years now. Been going to meetings, trying to make amends. You were on my list. Your list, Jasmine repeated flatly. I'm an item to check off so you can feel better about yourself? No, that's not. You don't get to come here and ask for forgiveness just because you're working a program, Jasmine interrupted, standing up. You don't get to make yourself feel better by apologizing to me. Where were you when I was sleeping in library bathrooms? Where were you when I was eating out of dumpsters? Where were you? Crystal was crying now. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Jasmine took a deep breath, trying to center herself. This was triggering something deep inside her, all the abandonment and fear she'd thought she'd processed. I appreciate that you're trying to get your life together, she said finally. But I can't give you forgiveness right now. Maybe not ever. You caused real harm, Crystal. You left a child alone in the world. That has consequences. I understand, Crystal said, standing up. I just wanted you to know that I think about you. That I regret what I did. After Crystal left, Jasmine sat in her office, shaking. Aaliyah appeared in the doorway. You okay, boss? No, Jasmine admitted. I'm really not. Want to talk about it? So Jasmine told her everything. The whole story of Crystal and the abandonment and the years on the street. Aaliyah listened without judgment, without trying to fix it. When Jasmine finished, Aaliyah said simply, That's really heavy. I'm sorry that happened to you. The worst part is I kind of understand her, Jasmine said. I know what it's like to be drowning. But understanding doesn't mean I have to forgive her. You don't owe her anything, Aaliyah agreed. You get to feel however you feel about this. That evening, Jasmine drove to the Stone mansion. She found Catherine in the kitchen, preparing dinner. One look at Jasmine's face and Catherine put down the knife. What happened? Jasmine told her about Crystal's visit. Catherine listened, then pulled Jasmine into a tight hug. I'm proud of you for setting boundaries, she said. You don't have to forgive someone just because they apologize. But what if holding on to this anger hurts me more than her? Jasmine asked. Then you'll work through it in therapy. In your own time. Not because someone showed up and demanded absolution. Margaret appeared in the doorway, having one of her clear moments. Did someone hurt my Jasmine? She asked, her voice protective. It's okay, Grandma Margaret, Jasmine said, using the name she'd started calling her 2 years ago. Just dealing with some old pain. Margaret shuffled over and took Jasmine's face in her hands. You've already survived the worst. This is just an echo of old hurt. It can't touch you unless you let it. That night, lying in her childhood bedroom in the mansion, Jasmine thought about Crystal's apology, about forgiveness and healing, about the ways the past could reach into the present. She thought about the residents at the shelter, many of whom carried similar wounds, similar abandonments. How could she help them heal if she couldn't heal herself? But maybe she realized healing wasn't about erasing the hurt. Maybe it was about learning to carry it without letting it define you. She'd been carrying it for 8 years already. She could keep carrying it until she was ready to put it down, if she ever was. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Can't sleep. Keep thinking about my parents. How did you forgive yours? Jasmine typed back. I haven't. And that's okay. Forgiveness isn't a requirement for healing. Really. You get to be angry. You get to be hurt. Those feelings are valid. Thanks. That helps. Jasmine set down her phone and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow, she'd wake up and go back to the shelter. She'd help Marcus work through his feelings about his parents. She'd check on Destiny's prenatal appointments. She'd meet with 3 new potential residents. She'd do the work she was called to do, even while carrying her own unresolved pain. Because that was the thing about healing. It wasn't linear. It wasn't neat. Sometimes old wounds reopened just when you thought they'd healed. And that was okay. That was human. By summer, the shelter was operating at full capacity with a waiting list of 50 young people. The success was overwhelming in the best and worst ways. Every day brought new challenges, new crises, new kids who needed help. Jasmine was working 60-hour weeks, running on coffee and determination, barely sleeping. Catherine noticed first. You're burning out, she said one evening when Jasmine came home at midnight. You can't help anyone if you destroy yourself in the process. I'm fine, Jasmine insisted, but she wasn't. She was having nightmares again, waking up at 3 a.m. in a cold sweat, remembering the feeling of freezing to death on those stone steps. Her therapist had warned her about this, about how trauma had a way of resurfacing under stress. The breaking point came on a Thursday in July. A 15-year-old named Jayla had come to the shelter 3 weeks earlier, quiet and withdrawn, refusing to talk about why she'd been living on the streets. Jasmine had been working with her slowly, building trust, not pushing. That Thursday, Jayla disappeared. She'd been there at breakfast, then gone by lunch. Jasmine called her phone repeatedly, checked all her usual spots, drove through the neighborhood searching. Nothing. By evening, panic had set in. Jayla was out there somewhere, alone and vulnerable, and it was Jasmine's job to protect her. "We need to call the police," Aaliyah said. "No," Jasmine said sharply. "We can't. What if she's undocumented? What if calling the cops puts her in danger? What if not calling them puts her in worse danger?" Jasmine knew Aaliyah was right, but the thought of involving police made her sick. Too many memories of being harassed, being moved along, being treated like a criminal for being homeless. But this wasn't about her. This was about Jayla. They filed a missing persons report. The officer who took the information was surprisingly compassionate, promising to look for Jayla without immediately assuming she'd run off willingly. Then there was nothing to do but wait. Jasmine couldn't wait. She drove through Chicago's South Side for hours, checking parks and alleys and abandoned buildings. She posted on social media. She called every contact she had in the homeless community. Nothing. At 2 a.m., her phone finally rang. It was a number she didn't recognize. "Hello. Is this Jasmine Brooks?" A young voice scared. "Yes, who is this?" "My name is Devin. I'm with Jayla. She's okay, but she asked me to call you. She's scared to come back." "Where are you?" "I'll come get you both." Devin gave her an address, an abandoned warehouse in Englewood. Jasmine should have brought backup. Should have called Aaliyah or Catherine or even the police. But she just grabbed her keys and drove, fear and relief warring in her chest. The warehouse was dark and dangerous looking. Jasmine picked her way through the debris, calling Jayla's name. She found them in a corner on the second floor, two teenage girls huddled together, one of them visibly pregnant. "Jayla," Jasmine said softly. "I'm so glad you're safe." "I'm sorry," Jayla said, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry. I was going to tell you, but I was scared. I'm pregnant, Ms. Jasmine. 5 months. I didn't want you to kick me out." Jasmine sat down on the dirty floor beside them, her professional training kicking in. "Jayla, we would never kick you out for being pregnant. That's exactly the kind of situation we're here to help with." "That's what they all say at first," Devin interjected, protective of her friend. "Then they change their minds. Then you're back on the street." "I was on the street too," Jasmine said. "For 3 years. I know what it's like to not trust anyone, to expect the worst. But I promise you, the shelter is different. We don't give up on people." "I'm scared," Jayla whispered. "I'm so scared." "I know. But you don't have to be scared alone anymore." Getting them both back to the shelter, getting Jayla checked out at the hospital, making sure both girls were fed and safe, took until dawn. By the time Jasmine got home, she was running on pure adrenaline. She walked into the stone mansion to find Catherine, David, and Margaret all waiting in the kitchen. They'd been up all night, worried about her. "You found her," Catherine said, relief evident in her voice. "I found her," Jasmine confirmed. Then, without warning, she started crying. Not gentle tears, but deep, wrenching sobs that seemed to come from somewhere ancient inside her. Catherine pulled her close, and Jasmine cried into her shoulder the way she'd wanted to cry 8 years ago, but hadn't been able to. "I can't do this," Jasmine gasped between sobs. "There are too many of them. Too many kids who need help. Too many Jaylas and Marcuzes and Destinies. I can't save them all, and it's killing me." "You're not supposed to save them all," Catherine said firmly. "You're supposed to help the ones you can reach. That's it. That's enough. But what about the ones I can't reach? What about all the kids still out there?" Margaret spoke up, her voice surprisingly strong. "My dear girl, you can't light yourself on fire to keep others warm. You've got to keep your own flame alive first." David brought her a glass of water and sat beside her. "When you saved Grandma Margaret, you almost died doing it. We don't want you to almost die doing this. We want you to have a long life helping people, not a short one burning yourself out." Jasmine knew they were right. She'd been operating from a place of trauma, trying to save everyone because she knew what it felt like to not be saved. But she couldn't keep working like this. She was heading toward a breakdown, and that wouldn't help anyone. "I need to hire more staff," she said finally. "And I need to start actually taking days off." "Yes," Catherine agreed. "Both of those things. And I need to go back to therapy more regularly." "Also yes." Jasmine took a shaky breath. "I'm scared that if I slow down, if I take care of myself, kids will fall through the cracks." "They might," Catherine said gently. Not because of you, but because the system is broken. But you breaking yourself won't fix the system. It'll just mean one less person fighting for them. That conversation marked a turning point. Jasmine hired 2 new case managers and a night supervisor. She started leaving the shelter by 7 p.m. most nights. She went back to seeing her therapist twice a week. She started running again, something she'd loved but had given up due to lack of time. It wasn't easy. The guilt of leaving work undone, of not being available 24/7, gnawed at her. But slowly, she started to feel more like herself again. Started to sleep through the night. Started to remember that she was allowed to have a life outside of work. One evening, 3 weeks after the incident with Jayla, Jasmine sat in the shelter's common room with her residents. They were playing cards and talking about their days, and Jasmine realized something important. She didn't have to be everything to them. She just had to be present, consistent, and real. That was enough. That had always been enough. September brought changes to everyone in the Stone family. David had graduated from Northwestern and was working at Catherine's real estate firm, learning the business from the ground up. Margaret's health had declined significantly, and she now needed full-time care. Catherine had cut back her hours to spend more time at home. And Jasmine was learning to balance her calling with her own well-being. The shelter was thriving under the new staffing structure. Marcus had gotten his GED and was starting community college in the spring. Destiny had given birth to a healthy baby girl she'd named Hope and had decided to keep her. Ramon was working full-time and had moved into a transitional housing program. Jayla and Devin were both receiving prenatal care and planning for their futures. The success stories were piling up, proof that the model worked. But it was a cold Tuesday in October when everything came full circle. Jasmine was in her office when Aaliyah knocked on the door, looking concerned. "There's someone here," she said. "She's not asking for help. She's asking about making a donation. A big one." Jasmine walked to the lobby and stopped cold. The woman standing there was elegant, probably in her 60s, with silver hair and expensive clothes. But it was her eyes that Jasmine recognized. She'd seen those eyes before, in a photograph clutched by a confused old woman on a freezing December night 8 years ago. "Catherine," Jasmine said, confused. "What are you?" "I'm not Catherine Stone," the woman interrupted gently. "I'm Catherine Stone Davis. Catherine's older sister. Margaret's other daughter." Jasmine felt the world tilt slightly. But Margaret always talked about Catherine. She never mentioned. "A second daughter?" Catherine Davis finished. "I'm not surprised. We've been estranged for 25 years. I left Chicago when I was 25, moved to Seattle, started my own life. We had a terrible fight about choices I made, things I said. I was young and stubborn, and by the time I wanted to reconcile, too much time had passed. Pride on both sides kept us apart." She looked around the shelter, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I read about this place. About you saving my mother's life 8 years ago. About the foundation named after her. I've been following the shelter's progress for months, trying to work up the courage to reach out." "Does Catherine know you're here?" Jasmine asked. "Your sister Catherine?" "No. I haven't spoken to her in 25 years. I don't know if she'd even want to hear from me." Jasmine studied this woman, seeing the regret and hope warring in her face. She thought about Crystal's apology, about forgiveness and family, and the ways we hurt each other. "Why are you really here?" she asked. Catherine Davis took a deep breath. "Because I'm dying. Pancreatic cancer. 6 months, maybe less. And I want to make amends before I go. I want to meet my mother again, if she'll see me. I want to talk to my sister. And I want to do something good with the money I've made, something that matters. This shelter matters. You matter. I don't know if Margaret will remember you," Jasmine warned. "Her dementia is advanced. Some days she doesn't even remember me. I still need to try. I need to tell her I'm sorry. That I wasted 25 years being stubborn and angry when I could have been part of her life." Jasmine made a decision. "Come with me. We'll go see her together. But Catherine, your sister, she's there. She's going to see you. Are you ready for that?" "I've been getting ready for 25 years. The drive to the Stone Mansion was tense. Catherine Davis talked nervously about her life in Seattle, about the tech company she'd founded, about the husband she'd lost to a heart attack 5 years ago, about not having children, about being alone with her regrets. Jasmine listened, thinking about family and estrangement and the ways we let time slip away. When they pulled up to the mansion, Catherine Davis stared at it with obvious emotion. "I grew up in this house," she said quietly. I haven't seen it in a quarter century. They walked to the door. Jasmine rang the bell, and Patricia, the housekeeper, answered. Her eyes went wide when she saw Catherine Davis. Miss Catherine? The older Miss Catherine? Hello, Patricia. Is my sister here? I'll get her. Moments later, Catherine Stone appeared in the doorway. She saw her sister and froze, her face going through a dozen expressions in seconds. Shock, anger, hurt, and finally something that might have been hope. Kate, she whispered, using a nickname Jasmine had never heard. Cat, Catherine Davis replied, her voice breaking. They stood staring at each other, 25 years of silence between them. Then Catherine Stone did something that surprised everyone. She stepped forward and pulled her sister into a fierce hug, both of them crying. I'm sorry, Kate sobbed. I'm so sorry for everything. I'm sorry too, Kat replied. I should have reached out. I should have called. I should have accepted you for who you were. They held each other, making up for lost time, while Jasmine and Patricia watched with tears in their own eyes. Finally, they pulled apart. Mom, Kate asked. Is she? She's here, Kat said. She's not well, Kate. The dementia is bad. She might not know you. I still need to see her. They went inside together, the two sisters reunited, with Jasmine following behind. Margaret was in her usual chair by the window, staring out at the gardens. Kat approached first. Mom, someone's here to see you. Margaret turned, her eyes focusing slowly. She looked at Kate, and for a long moment there was no recognition. Then something shifted in her expression. Catherine, she said, her voice wondering. Is that my Catherine? It's me, Mom, Kate said, kneeling beside her chair. I came home. Where have you been? Margaret asked, not accusatory but genuinely confused. I've been waiting for you. I know, Mom. I'm sorry I took so long. Margaret reached out and touched Kate's face. My beautiful girl. I missed you. I missed you too. Jasmine quietly left them alone, giving the family privacy for their reunion. She found David in the kitchen, and when she told him what was happening, he was shocked. I didn't even know Mom had a sister. Neither did I until today. That evening, the three Catherines sat together in the living room. Margaret, Kat, and Kate. They looked through old photo albums, Margaret's memory coming and going, but her happiness at having both her daughters with her was constant. Jasmine watched from the doorway, marveling at the strange ways families could heal. Later, Kate approached Jasmine privately. Thank you, she said, for saving my mother's life all those years ago, for giving me this chance to reconcile with her before she's gone. I just did what anyone would do, Jasmine said. No, Kate corrected gently. You did what few people would do. You gave everything you had for a stranger. That kind of selflessness is rare. She pulled out an envelope. I want to donate to the shelter. $1 million to start, with more to come from my estate when I'm gone. Jasmine's eyes widened. That's too much. It's not nearly enough for what you've given my family. Kate smiled sadly. I don't have children to leave my money to. I want it to go somewhere that matters, somewhere that changes lives the way you changed my mother's life. Will you accept it? Jasmine thought about all the kids they could help with that money, all the young people who needed a second chance. Yes, she said. We'll accept it, and we'll use it to make sure no kid has to sleep on the streets if they don't want to. That's all I ask. As Jasmine drove home that night, she thought about the strange symmetry of life. 8 years ago, she'd saved Margaret and gained a family. Tonight, Margaret's other daughter had come home, and the circle had widened again. Families weren't just the people you were born to. They were the people who chose to stay, who showed up, who loved you through the hard parts. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Got accepted to Northwestern on full scholarship. Social work program. I want to be like you. Jasmine smiled through happy tears. The circle kept expanding, kept including more people, kept creating more chances for connection and healing. She texted back, You're going to be better than me. You're going to change the world. And she believed it. Margaret Stone passed away peacefully in her sleep on a quiet November morning, exactly 9 years after Jasmine had found her in the snow. She was surrounded by family, both her daughters, her grandson David, and Jasmine, who'd been holding her hand when she took her last breath. The funeral was large and beautiful. Hundreds of people came to pay their respects, people whose lives Margaret had touched over her 86 years. But the most moving part was when Catherine Stone asked Jasmine to speak. Jasmine stood at the podium, looking out at the crowd, and began. 9 years ago, I was 17 years old, homeless, and had $23 to my name. I found a woman dying in the snow, and I made a choice. I chose to stay. I didn't know that choice would save both our lives. I didn't know it would lead to this family, this foundation, this legacy of kindness. She looked at the two Catherines, sitting side by side. Margaret Stone taught me that family is about showing up. It's about staying when things get hard. It's about forgiveness and second chances and never giving up on the people you love. She gave me a home when I had none. She gave me a family when I was alone. And through her example, she taught me how to extend that same grace to others. Her voice broke slightly. The Margaret Stone Foundation has now helped over 200 young people. We've expanded to 3 locations across Chicago. We've seen kids go from sleeping on the streets to graduating college. We've watched babies being born into safe situations. We've witnessed miracles, big and small, every single day. And it all started because one woman, one cold night, needed help, and because she taught me that being wealthy isn't about money. It's about having a heart generous enough to share what you have. After the service, as people mingled and shared memories, Kate pulled Jasmine aside. "I wanted you to know," she said. "I've revised my estate plans. When I die, everything goes to the foundation. Everything. We're talking about $50 million, Jasmine. You'll be able to help thousands of kids." "Kate, I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything. Just promise me you'll keep doing what you're doing. Keep being the person who stays when others walk away. Keep building families from strangers. Keep proving that kindness can change the world." "I promise." 6 months after Margaret's death, Jasmine stood in front of a crowd at the grand opening of the 4th Margaret Stone Foundation shelter. This one in Seattle, funded by Kate's donation. Kate herself was too ill to attend, but she'd sent a video message that played on a screen behind the podium. "This shelter," Kate's image said, her voice thin but determined, "is my apology and my amends. I spent 25 years away from my family because of pride and hurt. I can't get those years back. But I can make sure that other young people get second chances, get the support they need, get to build the families they deserve. Thank you, Jasmine Brooks, for showing us all what courage really looks like." The Seattle shelter was different from the Chicago locations. It had a large art studio, a music room, and a program specifically for LGBTQ youth. Marcus had helped design it, bringing his own experiences to bear on creating a truly inclusive space. He was 21 now, finishing his degree at Northwestern, and already being recruited by nonprofits across the country. But he'd told Jasmine he wanted to stay in Chicago, wanted to work at the foundation, wanted to pay forward what had been given to him. Aaliyah was running the 2nd Chicago location now, a full-fledged program director with her own team. Destiny was working as a peer counselor while studying early childhood education, her daughter Hope now 2 years old and thriving. Ramon had become a youth advocate, speaking at city council meetings about homeless issues. The kids Jasmine had helped were becoming the helpers themselves, the circle continuing to expand. That evening, after the Seattle opening, Jasmine walked along Puget Sound, thinking about everything that had happened over the past 9 years. She thought about that freezing December night, about the choice she'd made to stay with Margaret, about how one decision had rippled out to touch hundreds of lives. Her phone rang. It was Catherine Stone. "How did the opening go?" "Perfectly." Kate would have been proud. There was a pause. "Jasmine, I need to tell you something. Kate passed away this morning, peacefully in her sleep." Jasmine sat down on a bench overlooking the water, tears streaming down her face. Another loss, another ending. But also another beginning, because Kate's legacy would live on through the foundation, through the kids they'd help, through the families they'd build. She made it to see the Seattle shelter open, even if only by video, Jasmine said. "She made it home to you and Margaret before the end." "That's something." "That's everything," Catherine agreed. "And it's because of you. You gave us that gift." After they hung up, Jasmine sat watching the sunset over the water. She thought about all the people who'd shaped her journey. Grandma Rose, who'd taught her kindness. Margaret, who'd given her a family. Catherine, who'd become the mother figure she'd needed. David, who'd become the brother she'd never had. Kate, who'd shown her that it's never too late to come home. And all the kids at the shelters, who taught her every day about resilience and hope and the human capacity for survival. A young woman approached the bench, maybe 19 or 20, with a backpack and the telltale look of someone living rough. "Excuse me," she said quietly. "Do you know if there are any shelters around here? I'm new to Seattle, and I don't know where to go." Jasmine smiled. "Actually, yes. There's one about 10 blocks from here. It's called the Margaret Stone Foundation. It's specifically for young people. Do you want me to walk you there? The girl's eyes filled with tears. You'd do that? Of course, Jasmine said, standing up. Nobody should have to find their way alone. As they walked through the Seattle streets together, Jasmine told the girl about the shelter, about the programs, about the community she'd find there. She told her that it was okay to be scared, okay to not trust it at first, okay to take her time feeling safe. Why are you being so nice to me? The girl asked. Because someone was nice to me once, Jasmine said simply. And it changed everything. When they reached the shelter, Jasmine introduced the girl to the staff, made sure she was settled, and gave her a card with her personal number. If you need anything, Jasmine said, you call me. Anytime. I mean that. Flying back to Chicago the next day, Jasmine thought about that encounter, about how the cycle of kindness kept perpetuating itself. Every person helped became someone who could help others. Every act of compassion created ripples that spread outward indefinitely. Back in Chicago, Jasmine threw herself into work with renewed purpose. The foundation was expanding beyond just emergency shelter. They were developing programs for job training, educational support, mental health services, and long-term housing assistance. They were working with city officials on policy changes. They were training other organizations on trauma-informed care. The work was endless, but it was working. On a cold December evening, exactly 10 years after that night she'd found Margaret, Jasmine stood at the memorial plaque on the Stone Mansion steps. Catherine and David joined her there, as they did every year on this anniversary. 10 years, David said, shaking his head. It feels like yesterday and a lifetime ago at the same time. 4 shelters across 2 cities, Catherine added. Over 500 young people helped. 12 babies born into safe situations. 37 GED diplomas earned. 22 kids in college. The numbers are staggering. The numbers are people, Jasmine corrected gently. Each one is a Marcus or an Aaliyah or a Destiny. Each one is someone who needed help and got it. They stood in silence for a moment, remembering Margaret, remembering Kate, remembering all the people who'd been part of this journey. Then Catherine spoke. Jasmine, there's something I need to tell you. I've been thinking about this for a while, and I've made a decision. I'm stepping back from the real estate business. I'm making David CEO, and I'm coming to work at the foundation full-time. Jasmine turned to her, shocked. Catherine, you don't have to. I want to, Catherine interrupted. Mom spent her life building wealth. Kate spent her life building a business. I want to spend the rest of my life building what you've built. Families, hope, second chances. If you'll have me. If I'll have you? Jasmine laughed through tears. You've had me for 10 years. This just makes it official. David grinned. Does this mean I finally get to be CEO without Mom looking over my shoulder? Don't get cocky, Catherine said, but she was smiling. I'll still be a phone call away if you need advice. As they walked inside to warm up, Jasmine felt a profound sense of gratitude. 10 years ago, she'd had nothing but $23, a thin jacket, and a choice. She'd chosen to stay, to help, to be kind even when it cost her everything. And that choice had built this, a family, a foundation, a legacy that would outlive them all. Later that night, Jasmine received an email from a woman named Jennifer Lawrence, no relation to the actress, the email joked. Jennifer was a journalist working on a book about everyday heroes, people who'd made extraordinary choices in ordinary moments. She wanted to interview Jasmine about that December night 10 years ago. Jasmine agreed to meet her the following week at a coffee shop in downtown Chicago. Jennifer turned out to be a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a warm smile. They talked for 3 hours, Jasmine sharing details she'd never told anyone about that night. The fear, the cold, the certainty that she was dying, the decision to hold on just a little longer. What made you stay? Jennifer asked. Most people would have called 911 and left. Most people would have prioritized their own survival. What made you different? Jasmine thought about that question, really thought about it. I don't think I was different, she said finally. I think I was just raised by someone who taught me that being poor doesn't mean being unkind. My grandmother used to say that the measure of a person isn't what they do when people are watching. It's what they do when no one is looking and there's no reward. But there was a reward, Jennifer pointed out. You gained a family, a home, opportunities you never would have had. I didn't know that would happen, Jasmine said. When I wrapped my arms around Margaret that night, I thought we were both going to die. I thought I was giving up my life to make sure she didn't die alone. The family, the foundation, all of this, it was an unexpected gift. But it wasn't why I stayed. Then why did you stay? Jasmine looked out the window at the Chicago streets, at the people hurrying past in the winter cold. Because she was a human being who needed help, and I was there. That's it. That's the whole reason. Grandma Rose taught me that when you see someone suffering and you have the power to help, even if it costs you everything, you help. That's what makes us human. The book, when it came out 8 months later, was titled The Choice to Stay. Stories of ordinary people making extraordinary decisions. Jasmine's story was the opening chapter, and it sparked a national conversation about homelessness, about youth in crisis, about the power of individual choices to create systemic change. The publicity brought more donations to the foundation, more volunteers, more community support. It also brought criticism from people who said Jasmine was exploiting her story for personal gain, that the foundation was just a business disguised as charity, that she was part of the nonprofit industrial complex that perpetuated the problems it claimed to solve. The criticism stung, but Jasmine had learned over the years that you couldn't please everyone. Some people would always find fault, would always look for ulterior motives. What mattered was the work, the kids who were being helped, the lives being changed. On a spring evening, Jasmine was invited to speak at a TEDx event. She stood on the red circle, looking out at an audience of hundreds, with thousands more watching online. She told her story, but she also issued a challenge. Every single day, she said, you encounter people who are struggling. Maybe it's the person asking for change on the corner. Maybe it's the coworker who seems withdrawn. Maybe it's the kid in your neighborhood who's always alone. You have a choice in those moments. You can walk away, protect yourself, preserve your comfort. Or you can stay. You can engage. You can help. She paused, letting the words sink in. I'm not saying you should give away everything you have. I'm not saying you should put yourself in danger. But I am saying that small acts of kindness, repeated consistently over time, can change the world. A sandwich. A conversation. A phone call to connect someone with resources. These things cost us so little, but they can mean everything to someone who's struggling. 10 years ago, I made a choice to stay with a stranger in the cold. That choice saved both our lives and created a ripple effect that's still spreading. But you don't need a dramatic moment to make a difference. You just need to be willing to see people, to acknowledge their humanity, to offer what help you can. She ended with the words that had become the foundation's motto. You're never poor if you still have kindness. So be rich. Be generous with your compassion. And when you see someone who needs help, choose to stay. The talk went viral, racking up millions of views. Jasmine's inbox filled with messages from people sharing their own stories of choosing to stay, of helping strangers, of extending kindness when it would have been easier to walk away. The movement was growing, spreading, becoming bigger than Jasmine herself. But for Jasmine, the most meaningful moments weren't the big stages or the viral videos. They were the quiet ones. Marcus graduating from Northwestern with honors. Aaliyah getting engaged to a wonderful woman she'd met at a community organizing meeting. Destiny's daughter Hope starting kindergarten. A kid she'd never met sending her a photo of their college acceptance letter, saying, "You helped my cousin 3 years ago, and she told me to never give up. I didn't. Thank you." These were the moments that mattered, the evidence that the work was real and necessary and making a difference. As Jasmine approached her 30th birthday, she found herself reflecting on the journey. From sleeping on the streets at 17 to running a multi-million-dollar foundation at 30. From having nothing to being able to help hundreds of others. From being alone to having a family that chose her every day. Catherine threw her a surprise party at the mansion. The guest list included staff from all 4 shelters, current and former residents, community partners, and of course David, who'd flown in from a business trip specifically for the occasion. As Jasmine stood in the grand living room, surrounded by people she'd helped and people who'd helped her, she felt overwhelmed with gratitude. This life she was living, it was beyond anything she could have imagined that cold December night 10 years ago. David raised his glass for a toast. To Jasmine, he said, who taught us all that family isn't about blood or DNA. It's about showing up, staying present, and choosing to love people even when it's hard. You've built something beautiful here, something that will outlast all of us. But more than that, you've shown us how to be better humans. Happy birthday, sis. Everyone cheered and drank, and Jasmine felt tears rolling down her cheeks. Happy tears, grateful tears, tears of disbelief that this was her life now. Later, as the party wound down, Jasmine found herself outside on those same stone steps, looking at the memorial plaque. Catherine joined her, wrapping a warm coat around Jasmine's shoulders. "You know what I think about sometimes?" Catherine said. "What would have happened if you'd walked away that night? If you'd kept your jacket, kept walking, left Mom to freeze?" "I couldn't have lived with myself," Jasmine said simply. "I know. And that's what makes you who you are." Catherine squeezed her shoulder. "You've given so many people a second chance at life, Jasmine. Including me. I was so focused on work before that night, on building my empire, on success as the world defines it. You showed me what real success looks like. It's people, connections, love, and making a difference." They stood together in comfortable silence, two women who'd become mother and daughter through choice rather than biology. Finally, Catherine spoke again. "What's next for you? You've accomplished so much already. Where do you go from here?" Jasmine thought about that question. "I want to start a program for kids who age out of foster care before they end up on the streets. Prevention instead of intervention. I want to open more shelters in more cities. I want to change policy, change systems, change the way society thinks about homeless youth." She smiled. "And I want to keep showing up, one kid at a time, one moment at a time, one choice at a time." "Then that's what we'll do," Catherine said. Together. As they walked back inside, Jasmine took one last look at the spot where her life had changed forever. 10 years ago, she'd been dying on these steps, holding a stranger, choosing kindness over survival. Today, she was thriving, surrounded by family, making a difference in the world. The choice to stay had saved her life in ways she couldn't have imagined. And she was spending every day since then making sure other young people got that same chance. The chance to be seen, to be valued, to find their place in the world, to discover that they mattered. Because everyone deserves someone who will stay. Everyone deserves kindness, especially when they need it most. And everyone has the power to be that person for someone else, to make the choice that changes everything. Jasmine Brooks had learned that lesson on a freezing December night when she was just 17 years old. And she was spending the rest of her life teaching it to others, one choice, one moment, one act of staying at a time. The legacy of that night wasn't just the foundation or the hundreds of kids helped or the millions of dollars raised. The legacy was the ripple effect of kindness spreading outward infinitely, touching lives in ways that could never be fully measured or quantified. It was Marcus becoming a social worker. It was Aaliyah running a shelter. It was Destiny raising her daughter with love and stability. It was every kid who'd been helped paying it forward, choosing to stay when someone else needed them, extending the same grace they'd received. And it all started with one girl, one woman, one blanket, and one impossible choice on one impossible night. The choice to stay.